Welcome to the Pindown, your Detroit Pistons podcast. I'm your host, Wes Davenport from Motor City Hoops and Detroit Bad Boys.
And I'm Blake Silverman, writer for Detroit Bad Boys, covering everything from the Pistons to the NBA draft and the Motor City Cruise.
And all right, Blake, I think Detroit sports fans are just a little hungry for content right now because, look, you got the Lions, they win in week 1. I know the Tigers are playing really well right now. And
they
our
lost
comment
today.
section,
Bad loss
they
today.
did? Oh,
yeah,
no.
I didn't watch it, but apparently.
This is what they do, but it's fine. It's fine. Beyond the loss today, they've been playing very well. And look, we got a ton of questions this week. So we're pretty much going to dive right in here, but we're going to open up the show kind of doing a quick season preview for Jaden Ivey and Jalen Duren. We're going to do a couple more of these, obviously, as the season approaches. Try to cover the majority of the team, at least the guys that are actually earmarked or seem to be earmarked for minutes right off the bat. And then we're going to dive into as many of these questions as we can get to, and I'm sure we're going to have some from the live audience too. So, we got a meaty episode for you guys. I'm pretty excited.
Let's go. Yeah, I'm excited too. Basketball is right around the corner, even though football season just started. I haven't even told you this yet, Wes, but I'm going to Motor City Cruise open tryouts on Saturday. So excited to have some live basketball back in my life. And then before we know it, it's the NBA season and training camp is going to be right around the corner.
Wait, are you going to try out or are you just there?
I was invited to cover it. So maybe I'll bring my basketball shoes just in case, but no.
Yeah, I think you'll need to keep those puppies warm, ready to go, just in case. Yeah. You know, they need an extra body out there. You're in a prime position. You could fill.
There are plenty of other players who would be much better off than me. The competition is going to be very good, I'm sure. One guy made the team off the open tryout out of training camp last year, and another one got called back later in the season to join the team. So a lot of good players will be showing up. I'm excited. Never been to an open tryout before, so looking forward to it.
All right. Well, you guys watch for that coverage then from Blake. But, for this episode, where do you want to start? So we're talking Jaden Ivey, Jalen Duren. Take your pick. Who do you want to preview first?
Let's start with Ivy. We have a question about this that I won't spoil, but it was a bit related to some rumors. Really, all it was a rumor that was put out there today, I believe, by Eric Pincus at Bleacher Report, that there's speculation that the Pistons aren't sold on Jaden Ivey, and it's like, what does that really mean? But it also said no one believes they're ready to totally move off from him or anything like that. So I'm interested to hear your thoughts on Jaden Ivey and what we're looking for next season. So yeah, let's start with him.
All right. Well, let's just start with what he did last year. So Jaden Ivey averaged 15.4 points, 3.4 rebounds, 3.8 assists. He slashed 42.9, 33.6, and 74.9, that being from the floor, 3-point range, and the free throw line, respectively. He had 2.5 turnovers a night and 0.7 steals. So none of these are all that eye-popping of numbers. It's a little bit of a regression from his rookie year, which wasn't unexpected, given that the role was so different year 2 than it was year 1. But, what was the vibes for you coming off year 2 for Jaden Ivey and what you're hoping that he's able to improve here in the offseason?
I mean, just such a weird year for Jaden Ivey after he started the season coming off the bench and all the drama. We don't know what was happening internally, but seemingly what appeared to be some friction, or I guess just we don't think that Monty Williams thought as highly on Jaden Ivey as a lot of the fan base did, and maybe a ton of people in the front office too. So I think that was tough. You couple that with the losing streak that went on and on and on. And I mean, Ivy showed some good things, but I think he also wasn't super consistent. So what I'm looking for him mainly to improve on next year, I mean, one, first and foremost, I think he needs to, and the team needs to, like, understand his role, where he fits in on everything, but getting a bit more granular on certain things, like his effective field goal percentage last year, which is just field goal percentage but accounts for the extra point that you get from threes. That was 49.6%, which was in the 31st percentile among guards. It was an improvement from his rookie season. He was just in the 19th percentile there. But I think that number just goes to show how inconsistent he can be at times. And also, I mean, shooting from three, he shot 34.2%, which isn't horrible by any means, but it would be nice if he could get that up as well, just to be a little bit. We don't want him to just stand in the corner and all he does is space the floor for Cade and the other players around him. But I think if he can more consistently knock down shots from outside, he forces more hard closeouts, can make his path to the rim a little bit easier. So overall, I'm looking for him to hopefully get that effective field goal percentage up and just be able to build some confidence and string together some consistency night in and night out, which I don't think he's really been able to do at any point through his short career so far.
Yeah, let's stick on that efficiency here for a second. I've got the numbers pulled up for Jaden Ivey and his percentages and attempts for all of the, at the rim, 3 to 10 feet, then mid range, deep mid range, and 3 point range, right? And so here's the catch. And I think this is going to go a long way to figuring out how efficient he can be as a scorer eventually. Because, look, if he's going to be a guy that's going to average more than 20 points a night and really be impactful as a second option, this is what he needs to fix. So Jaden Ivey took more attempts from 3 to 10 feet than he did at the rim. Now, Jaden Ivey shot about 66% from the rim. He shot really well right from the front of the rim. Problem is, he took about 30 to 40 more shots from 3 to 10 feet, which is kind of that floater ish range. There, it was only 41%. Now, it only gets worse from here, okay? Because from 10 to 16 feet, which he still had about 115, he had 115 attempts from there. So call that about half as much as his attempts from 3 to 10 feet. He was at 34%. Okay, so basically, the further out he backs up to mid range, the worse this gets. His 3 point percentage wasn't awful, and we said it was about 34%. If he could get that up to 35, 36, 37, somewhere in that range, more than enough for him to be respected. But if he wants to get his efficiency up, we need to see significantly more rim attempts from him and a lot less of that, 10 to 16 footers, the short mid range, because he just really does not have that little elbow pull up in his bag right now.
Yeah, and I think that speaks to why his effective field goal rating was on the lower end amongst guards. Just because, I mean, it's great if you have a mid range game. Like, I think we've seen what that has done for Cade Cunningham in the past. But if it's not your strong suit, like, you really shouldn't be taking those shots, or at least not hunting them. Like, those shots will present themselves at times, but you gotta limit things and take smart shots, and guys need to score at the rim and be able to shoot threes to be successful in the NBA. So, and it seems like Jaden Ivey can be effective near the rim. He can be
Yeah.
a decently good 3 point shooter. We hope he gets at least a little bit better there too. But I think, I mean, it's not simple by any means, but I think if he can limit those long mid-range attempts, that, like you were saying, his efficiency went down and down as he got further away from the bucket. I think we could really see a step in both in terms of his numbers and in terms of, like, what he brings to the team, like giving everyone reasons why he should stay out on the floor as much as possible.
Right. And if he's going to make that leap as a scorer, which I know I really am hopeful that he's going to, and I know you want him to, right? It's going to be in a very not quite Maury ball type of role, but something similar to that. You'd want him ideally shooting almost entirely catch and shoot 3-point opportunities. And if not that, when he gets the ball on the perimeter, you want him to be in motion and attacking the basket immediately. If he's going to get cut off at, 10 feet, 16 feet, somewhere in that range, which I doubt because he is so athletic, he's so fast, it will be hard. If you would have to, as a defense, really sag deeply off the man in the corner in order to address Jaden Ivey before he gets within 10 feet of the hoop. And if they're doing that, Ivey's a good enough player and a good enough passer of the basketball to just make the simple kick out to the corner. That's something we've seen him do plenty over the past 2 seasons. So I'm not worried about that. It's just we really need to see him getting more layups, more dunks, more, little triple threat pivots around the rim that he likes to do every now and then. And if he wants to get the floaters going, it needs to be a lot more selective than what it has been in the past. He can't be shooting more floaters than layups and dunks. That's got to flip. It's got to be the other way around. The floater's a nice counter. Right now, that's his primary move, or at least that's what it was last season, and that's a big problem. So if we're going to see him take that leap as a scorer, which I'm hoping for, I think he can do. I'm really watching these attempts. He needs to narrow down and be a lot more intentional with these shots he is taking on the floor.
Yeah, and look, there's a lot of players on the Pistons who need to improve as 3-point shooters more than Jaden Ivey does. But that said, I think Jaden Ivey even getting better as a 3-point shooter just helps make everything a little bit easier, helps clear a pass to the lane, and helps those like dunks and layups and everything open up for him a little bit more, as opposed to having to settle for something in the mid range at the elbow or one of those floaters that you're mentioning. So I think even if he can get up to that like 35, 36 range, it just makes everything a little bit more easier. And hopefully you just see the efficiency rise across the board.
And this is a great comment here from MimC313 says, those sound like the kind of shots that will get easier with more spacing, which is
Yeah.
a good point. However, I do want to point this out. I just pulled up what he did his rookie year. The attempts from at the rim and from 3 to 10 feet, very similar. He did shoot more at the rim than he did from 3 to 10 feet, but his rookie year was 240 at the rim, 209 from 3 to 10. This past season, 216 at the rim, 242 from 3 to 10. So he actually even got more attempts total within that range between those two sections of the floor than he did his rookie year. So he was getting to that area more frequently, and he shot a better percentage from both. All right, at the rim last season, it was 65.7% at the rim his rookie year, looking at 58.9 from 3 to 10 last season, 41.3%, and his rookie year, 33.5. So we've already seen he already improved in both of these areas. He's already, even with the spacing concerns they had last year, got more attempts in these areas. Those are two things that you'd want to see. So I wouldn't necessarily say that while the spacing might make it easier for him to do these things, he's already gotten himself in the position to A, improve, and B, get there more often than he did as a rookie. And as a rookie, he had significantly better spacing and handled the ball a lot more in pick and roll. So that's a more advantageous driving position than he had last year as well. So I just don't think that in this case, spacing is the only thing, like the biggest factor. I think it'll play a part for him, but honestly, I just think it's the how intentional is he going to be with his shot attempts? That's really the next step we need to see.
Yeah. Well, also it's who is he going to be playing next to, right? Like is Jaden Ivey going to be in the starting lineup? We have another question about this? Is Ausar Thompson going to be in the starting lineup? We think Jalen Duren's a starter too. Like, will Jaden Ivey be playing next to Ausar and Duren, where he really has to be more of a spacer in that situation? So I think the team and like lineup context that he's in will tell us a lot. And yeah, hopefully we can see how having additional veterans who can shoot the ball helps him, because like you said, Wes, he's already improved a bit, and we just want to see that get more consistent and overall how he can fit next to Cade and be like the best player, like version of that he can be, or if it's not something that's going to work long term.
All right, let's move on to Jalen Duren here before we get into some questions. So quickly, what he did last season, he averaged 13.8 points, 11.6 rebounds, 2.4 assists. He slashed 61.9, 0, 79 from that being the floor, 3-point range, and free throw line, respectively. 2.1 turnovers, only 0.8 blocks, and 0.5 steals. So, what did you think of Duren as the season wrapped up last year? What are you looking for him to really improve on this offseason into this upcoming season?
Yeah, I mean, everyone is talking about it, really. I feel like the thing for Jalen Duren to improve on is his defense last season. His block percentage of 1.3% was in the 36th percentile amongst bigs, and steal percentage of 0.8 was just in the 15th percentile. So I think, like, we know he can do great things offensively. We know he's a heck of a rebounder on both ends of the floor. So we don't think that he's going to magically develop an outside shot or anything like that to be a floor spacing big. So I mean, I think really where you have to look for him to improve is on the defensive end of the floor. What does it look like? I mean, I think you can look at things like his positioning, his anticipation, if he's fouling guys a lot, getting in quick foul trouble, whatever it might be. But I just like to see some more defensive playmaking from Jalen Duren, and I think that will help him. I guess minimize some of the discourse around him and what his role is like on the team. If he can be the main big, the lead big for this team moving forward in the future, or if he's not going to be that defensive anchor, but what he brings to you on the offensive end as a pick and roll threat next to Cade, if that offsets what he's doing on defense. But it's just tough to have your main big have some defensive concerns that we're talking about. So I'd like to see it start there, get more blocks, getting more steals, and then hopefully we can read things like where he's putting himself on the floor, not getting into quick foul trouble, and just looking at the effort as well. As long as he's playing hard, not getting too caught up into whatever else is happening on the other end of the floor, getting back. But overall, I just want to see some more like defensive playmaking out of him, which I know is easier said than done. And he mentioned himself that he didn't really like bring it on that end last year. So just hoping we see a little bit more than that. It's the glaring and obvious one, but I feel like it's the only answer that really makes sense here.
Well, and here's a little bit more context on the defense stuff. So this is just from NBA.com. These are the hustle stats, right? So we want to talk about deflections per game. A really good value for that is over about 2.5. Just looking at this list, that'd be about the top end of the league where you'd really want someone to be if they're not going to be blocking a lot of shots, right? Like Nikola Jokic is on this. There are a couple other bigs that aren't big time shot blockers, and a few that are like Victor and Jaren Jackson Jr. But generally, the point still stands. Jalen Duren 1.2, so not very active at all. He's not having his hands up. He's not deflecting the ball very often as a defender. Now, on the other end of this, right, you want to look at contested shots per game. League leaders, Brook Lopez, he's over 15. but for the most part, pretty good bigs are over 9.5 to 10. All right, like Isaiah Stewart's at 9.4, Jakob Poeltl 9.3. That's kind of where you'd want your starting center to be, if not above that, right? Jalen Duren's at 8. So in both cases, he's underperforming. And truthfully, he's got to do one of those two things. If he's not going to contest a bunch of shots, he's got to get his hands on a lot of balls. And if he's not going to get his hands on a lot of balls, he's got to start contesting a lot of shots. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, yeah, 100%. And I mean, I think like we've seen some ball skills that he's flashed. Like we think that he can be a pretty good, and we've seen it too, playmaker as a big. Um, I mean, I don't want him shooting a ton of mid-range shots either, but we don't think he's ever going to be that big that steps out beyond the perimeter and knocks shots down. But I think like long mid range, which is outside of 14 feet, he shot just 20% last year. That's 33rd percentile among bigs. You can improve that. And even like in the short mid range, under 14 feet and outside of the rim, he shot 42%, which is okay. But I think you can improve that as well. Just because we know he can do solid things at the rim, rebounding the ball and everything, but maybe just adding a little bit more of a consistent mid-range game, which isn't something you want to look to a lot, but it would be nice for him to have as well.
Yeah, the thing with him on offense for me is that I look, there's just really no reason to think that he's going to shoot the ball. I understand he really improved as a free throw shooter, and that is awesome because it can keep him in at the end of games, right? But that's why it's awesome. It's not because it's going to be some indicator that he should shoot threes more often. This is just, it's nice to have a big man who can rebound the ball like he can, who's not a liability at the free throw line. So that's a big step for him, and I don't want to mitigate it. But to say that that means he's going to go on and be a 3-point shooter one day, I think is going to be a stretch. The excitement for Jalen Duren as an offensive player really should come from those ball skills that you mentioned, right? If he's going to be a really good offensive big, it's not going to be because he shoots the ball really well. It's going to be because he can pass the ball pretty well. He can square up, he can isolate and score very consistently on other bigs, and he can punish switches in the post, right? If he could do those three things, you've got a very exciting offensive player. What needs to be said is this, what I'm about to say. So as a pick and roll man, which we really want him to be doing more of, he's in the 77th percentile as a roll man. That needs to go up. He's got very good chemistry with Cade Cunningham. So that likely what NBA.com there, and all of these are going to be NBA.com. So what NBA.com is likely zoning in on there is that the turnovers he had out of the short roll knock him down a peg. So he's got to clean those up. He's very talented as a pick and roll man. He's in the 62nd percentile for isolation and only the 24th percentile for post ups. If he's going to be very good at those things, if he's going to be a guy that gets those reps, those isolation and those post up reps, it's going to be coming at the expense of guards who would be otherwise doing that. That's just how this is going to work. So some of the guards that would be taking away from are Jaden Ivey, who's in the 64th percentile for isolation, Cade Cunningham, who's in the 61st percentile as a pick and roll ball handler, and Simone Fontecchio, who's in the 72nd percentile as a spot up shooter. Jalen Duren needs to be better and more efficient in isolation and in some switch post ups than those guards are at those three things in order to justify him getting those reps. He needs to exceed their efficiency, not be as good. He needs to exceed it because a guard, generally speaking, can do more with the ball in their hands than a big can. And even very talented bigs, unless you're Nikola Jokic, that's very true for. Okay. So I think that for me, that's what I'm going to be watching the most. Is he going to become good enough or improve this season enough at those things where I can look and we can all say as fans, okay, give this guy a couple of years. He's going to be worth giving the reps to in games, if that makes sense. I don't think he's going to exceed that this season. That would be a ton to ask, and it would be totally unfair to him. He's only, what, 2021? He's still super young. But you need to see improvement in those areas to continue justifying the exploration of it. Otherwise, get the ball in a guard's hand.
Well, do you even want him to take away those looks like from those guards? I mean, it would be nice for him to be able to do it when the situation presents itself, but I don't know if it's necessarily something you even want to look to and go to more often than not.
Well, here's the thing. Right now, I think the answer is no if you want to win games. He's not going to be great in isolation. He's not going to be great as a post-up guy, even on a switch, because he's so young. He's still very raw. But if you are someone that thinks he's got like Bam Adebayo potential offensively, right? If the Pistons have, if their staff thinks that that's the kind of offensive player he can become, minus the shooting, like ignoring that Bam can kind of sort of stretch the floor, then it would be worth it to give him some of these reps now. They're not going to be good next year. The team's not going to be good next year. You're not really trying to go win 50 games or anything like that. You're still trying to develop all these young guys. So if that's a direction that the team that is, wants him to go, wants him to develop, it would make sense to earmark some of those possessions to him now. What I'll be watching is if he's improving in those areas, because if he's not, then maybe we should let go of that Bam Adebayo dream.
Yeah, and I guess I can understand too if you wanted to bring in both him and Jaden Ivey are extension eligible after
Mm-hmm.
this offseason. And do you want to
Right.
see if Duren can add that to his game? Like, are you in a situation where you're potentially choosing one or the other to extend? But I don't right now, and I'll caveat this by saying we have a full season of basketball to play. Like the Rockets didn't extend Alperen Sengun or Jalen Green this offseason. Like I feel like
Mm-hmm.
it, and they Jalen Green is up in the air, but Sengun definitely has showed a lot more at this current time than either Jaden Ivey or Jalen Duren did, even after his year two. And that's no slight to Jaden Ivey or Jalen Duren. It's just how great Sengun has looked. So I I'm really interested to know whether there is an internal decision between these guys or if you're both just gonna go into restricted free agency or one of them gets moved, whatever it might be. I feel like it's debatably the most interesting story heading into the season, but eh, from what we've heard, and I mean what Bickerstaff has said, and they've talked about both him and Trajan Langdon have talked about both Jaden Ivey and Jalen Duren in positive light. I feel like from what I've picked up just from their media availabilities is it seems like there's more belief or maybe more stock invested in Jalen Duren that he can be a piece of this team moving forward. So I'm interested to see whether that's the case and like potentially Duren gets extended in the offseason, Ivy doesn't, or what happens there. But yeah, if that is the case, I think you definitely need to put Duren in those situations to really see what he can do and how far his offensive game can go because we know he needs to make a leap on defense as well.
Regarding the media stuff with both of those two young players, there's what the team has said, and then there's what the team has done roster wise, and I think it's very interesting that those two things kind of conflict, isn't it? So they've definitely talked higher. Like I have heard more discussion positively about Jalen Duren from Bickerstaff, from Trajan Langdon, than I have Ivy. Not to say that they don't talk about Jaden Ivey positively. Like you said, they do. However, Jaden Ivey looks very much like he's earmarked for starting shooting guard, also backup point guard minutes. That's a big time role. they don't have many other options right now. That's just kind of how it looks. Meanwhile, they bring in Paul Reed to as a vastly overqualified third big. It's just interesting. There's a tension there, and I'm not saying that it's a like, oh, Paul Reed needs to start or anything like that, but there's definitely a little bit of a tension between the faith that they talk about and then the way they set up this roster. Like if you were less confident in Ivy, you'd have a backup point guard right now.
Right. My devil's advocate to that would just be, were you worried that if you didn't claim Paul Reed as he was going through waivers, like you had were the first waiver priority, like were you worried he wasn't going to get through that and you would be able to sign him to a lesser deal in just as a free agent? So, and also you needed a third big, and maybe were there not a lot of options out there? I mean, Wes, me and you both talked about Goga Batadze, and he re-signed in Orlando. So I think some of those interesting options got snatched up, and maybe was the acquisition of Paul Reed just a matter of, we know we need another big, and is this the best one that is available? Which I think it was when they
I
claimed
agree.
him and brought him in.
Oh, he's an exceptionally qualified third big. Just to kind of button up this one, it's just the how qualified he is where the tension's from, not the fact that they went and found a third big. But
Yeah,
let's
and where
dive into
does he
some
fit in?
questions. Right. Yeah, exactly. Let's dive into this one. This is a Jaden Ivey question. A lot of these are Jaden Ivey, Jalen Duren, which love perfect on theme. But so this is from a fella in the DBB comments says, what are your thoughts on the Jaden Ivey rumors? You kind of previewed this one, Blake, earlier. Says, what is the priority skill that he needs to show management, and who are his potential replacements next year if they move on? So, I mean, we've kind of talked about that priority skill. I assume we both kind of agree it's getting, his shot selection, I guess, and upping and increasing his efficiency. So, more generally, what are your thoughts on the Jaden Ivey rumors? I haven't heard them, so I'm interested to hear what you think.
Yeah, it was basically just to reiterate what they were in Bleacher Report. The article, I think the article was like a one trade target for every team in the NBA. So it wasn't just an article like, oh, the Pistons potentially want to move on from Jaden Ivey. I think it was some speculation with, I'm sure there was like reporting that went into it. You're not just gonna say something like that, but the article said like there's speculation that the Pistons aren't fully sold on Jaden Ivey. So does that mean he could potentially be available in the right deal? One, it and that's really like all the article mentioned on Jaden Ivey. It was just one of those things that got picked up by the aggregation accounts, and Jaden Ivey was the for focus of it. But the article also said that the Pistons have a decent amount of veterans who could be available. They might be interested in using them to leverage or acquire some draft capital. And it also mentioned Isaiah Stewart, how he's on a pretty team friendly deal. A contender might be interested in taking him on as a player who can impact the team immediately and also have another year of team control and potentially be a piece longer than just a vet you're bringing in on an expiring one team that was brought up alongside these names was the Pacers. Like if the Pacers are looking to add to make a push, could they make Benedict Mathurin or Jarris Walker available? Wes, know you're a big Jarris Walker guy. But and it actually did say that the reporter who published this, that he thought or heard that Jarris Walker might be the one that's more available of the two. So in terms of Ivy, I'm not reading too much into it now, but based on the team context and whether like things haven't went great on the Ivy and Detroit experiment so far, not saying that that couldn't change, but if he's your young guy who's going to bring you back a real like potentially a solid first round draft pick, is that a risk you're willing to take to move on from him. But I don't think the Pistons are fully out on Jaden Ivey by any means. It's just if there was an interesting deal on the table, and from what we know, the Pistons are still prioritizing adding some draft assets. Like, do you have to include Jaden Ivey in order to do that?
Yeah, it doesn't sound like there's much there. Sounds like just outside speculation, which is fine. Makes for an interesting article. But with that in mind, then, why don't we do this one here from Baked Over? Will Jaden Ivey be on the team for the last game of the season? Spew
Wes,
your hot
Wes,
take. What do you got?
Wes, you make your call first.
Yes, I think he
Okay.
is. I think he is. I think it's a breakout year. I've said that as a hot take before, I think last week or maybe 2 weeks ago. And you know what? I'm going to stand by it. Breakout year for Jaden Ivey. He kind of becomes the third guy out of the core group of four from last year that is worth keeping and investing in. That's my prediction.
Okay. Well, I was gonna say this no matter what you said, but I'm gonna say no. Just and obviously no one knows that for sure, but I'm just gonna buy what Trajan Langdon has been saying about being like aggressive in terms of trying to target draft capital. The Pistons have had no assets that have been able to fetch a first round pick. There's still that pick that was sent out through the Isaiah Stewart trade that's looming through the New York Knicks and is tying up some other deals. So I think if Jaden Ivey is your only asset you're willing to part with that will get you a first round pick, I'm gonna think that Trajan Langdon might do it. And that's totally me just like speculating. And things could go great for Jaden Ivey in the first part of the season, but there's still a move at the trade deadline, and you're thinking about whether you're going to pay him and Duren, neither one of them. And then that makes that decision a whole lot easier. So I'm just going to go out on a limb and say no, but I don't feel great about it either.
Well, I think it's totally fair. I mean, just practically speaking, and we've said this on this podcast before, but the Pistons won 14 games last year. They had five relatively interesting young players on that roster. One of them is Cade Cunningham. So the idea that on a 14-win roster, you would have 3 or 4 young players that are like legitimately worth investing in as long-term starters, that's a bit of a stretch. I understand that there was a lot going on off the court that kind of muddies that, but they still won 14 games. That is incredibly bad, right? So you've already got Cade. You know Cade's a keeper. The most likely scenario here is that there's maybe one guy. So that would be one of Jaden Ivey, Ausar Thompson, Jalen Duren, that are truly, that guy, quote unquote, that you are building into as a pillar, along with probably Ron Holland, who they just took 5 and doesn't apply to this anymore, which is just tough. It hurts a little.
Yeah, and I'm just throwing this out there in terms of, I guess, controversy or something to look into. But Jonathan Schwartz mentioned that Ivy and Hallie would be nice. Who knows if the Pacers are interested in Jaden Ivey? But we've heard all the like Jaden Ivey's grandfather played for the Lions, his mom played for the Detroit Shock. His mom is currently the head coach at Notre Dame. She has been there outside of a year she spent as an assistant with the Grizzlies since 2007. She also played for the Indiana Fever from longer than she did the Shock. So I think we know that Jaden Ivey has Detroit connections, but I think his Indiana connections run a little bit deeper. So just throwing
All
that
right.
out there.
And here's why I'm cracking up over here. If you guys are watching live, I had to mute myself. I was laughing a little too much. It's just the fact that Therese Halliburton and Jaden Ivey paired together is so freaking similar to Cade Cunningham and Jaden Ivey paired together. It's like the same, fire and ice idea. It's the fast flow. It's the exact same pairing, but Hallie's proven a lot more. He's
And
clearly a better player, at least
they
right
have
now.
Mathurin. Like, what are you doing with Mathurin?
Right.
And
But it's
like
just it's
like if
funny to me that like yeah, that would be a really interesting pairing. That's true. And then I went, well, no wonder I kind of like that idea. I like it here.
Well, yeah, I would think the Pacers would be more interested in one of the Pistons veterans or even an Isaiah Stewart, because I think potentially they're willing to part with one of their young pieces to bring in a win now player. And I don't think that that is really Jaden Ivey. Maybe they love him. Like, who knows? That could very well be the case. But yeah, who knows? It's hard to see that fit right now. Like, I think there are other situations that could be interesting for Ivy too, but we'll see. Nevertheless, I mean, it. I want to see how this season goes, but I think a new situation could help Jaden Ivey, which would be tough to watch for Pistons fans.
All right, let's get to this one. This is from at Larry Guthier at 17 on Twitter. It says, in terms of the role of Paul Reed, he thinks that a front court of Isaiah Stewart, Ausar Thompson, and Paul Reed would be very competent both on defense and offense. What do you think about that trio in the front court, Blake?
This is tough because I have been thinking about where Paul Reed fits into the rotation. Like, he definitely should. There has to be ways for him to play. I'm sure even if he's the third big and isn't in the rotation immediately, there will be reasons for him to play, whether it's injury, foul trouble, situation, whatever it might be. This specific front court worries me a bit just because Asar and Paul, like Isaiah Stewart, he can definitely stretch the floor a little bit, but I don't think he's getting the respect that like a Tobias Harris or Simone Fontecchio are by any means. And then you still have Asar out there and Paul Reed. He actually shot the ball from three pretty well in the G League, which gives me some optimism that maybe there's more there, but he really didn't do a ton shooting threes like while he played in the NBA, and maybe he needs a new situation to unlock that too. Um, I think I would like this a lot more if you had two of the three guys out there as opposed to all three at the same time, because I just think this makes it a little bit harder for your backcourt. I like it a lot defensively. It's just like, does it slow you down on offense too much to even try it?
Well, and to be honest, I do not like this trio, even if Paul Reed ends up shooting the ball really well. And it's for one very simple reason. And Asar Thompson, he can fix this. He can prove me wrong. But based on what we've seen at OTE and what we saw last season, I think it's a real problem for him. I'm not confident any one of these three players can string together 5 dribbles in the half court competently. Like I am, as soon as it gets over 2 or 3, it's a turnover waiting to happen. And we saw like that was the problem. That was the single problem with Isaiah Stewart at the 4 last season was, yeah, he shot the ball really well on good volume, but you didn't have to guard him like it because he's got a slow release. You can sag off and you can sprint and run by him on your closeout. You don't even have to close out for real, right? Like you can fly by him, and if you make him put the ball on the floor, you've won the possession. He can't do much with the ball off a live dribble. Asar Thompson, we talked about it before. He struggles with getting pressed up underneath him because he's got a bit of a high dribble with stiff hips, so he's got to fix that. And Paul Reed's not a guy you'd really want isolating either, or for anything more than like 1-2 dribble handoff sort of situation. So like the amount of pressure that those three would put on your guards that all have turnover issues, I would just be beyond afraid to put that out there offensively. That said, it would be very fun defensively. I think all of them could handle their matchups and you'd probably get a good amount of block shots. So like that part would be fun, but you'd just be hoping for a 0-0 period when these three were on the court together.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. I'm with you there.
Let's get to this one. This is actually kind of related. So this is from Buzzer Beater. It says, how do you feel about James Edwards III predicting that Ausar Thompson will be in the starting lineup over Jaden Ivey. He did kind of a training camp preview piece over on The Athletic. If you guys haven't read that, you should. It was really good, as always, as all our beat reporters are. But he says Ausar Thompson as the starting two. Buzzard Reader was a fan of that since the spring. He's pumped. We've talked about this a little bit before on the podcast, but what do you think about Ausar Thompson as a two after I just railed his ball handling ability?
Yeah, what you brought up is the thing, but it comes down to who is the like I'm wondering if Asar ends up starting, does that signify that the front office believes in him? Is it more a JB Bickerstaff call? A little bit of both. I mean, the final decision on who starts lies with JB Bickerstaff, but is there any discussion on we need to have Asar playing next to Cade? The thing about this for me is, I mean, we've talked about who's going to start a bunch, and almost like 95% of our iterations of the starting lineup include Jalen Duren. We've talked about what it looks like with Jalen Duren and Ausar Thompson playing next to each other offensively. And even, I mean, defensively for that matter, we need Jalen Duren to make some improvements there. But Ausar can maybe help pick up some of the slack on that, which is a good thing. But Wes, you've said it a bunch of times. I think placing Ausar in the starting lineup puts two non-shooters out there as opposed to just bad shooters. And Ivy is not even a bad shooter. I'd say he's an average shooter. So I don't know. I think there's a real possibility that we could see this just in terms of wanting to play Ausar next to Cade and potentially even seeing if you could work things out with Duren in the mix too. I just think if you're thinking of the best five you can put out there to make things easier and put Cade Cunningham in the best situation as possible, I don't think Asar is in the starting lineup if Duren is in there. And I don't know who you're starting at the five if Jalen Duren isn't your starting five. So a lot up in the air for me. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw it, but I just don't think it would be the most well optimized group you could put out there.
Right. And it would be, to me, it would be such a shame if this offseason Trajan Langdon went and added the complementary veterans that this team has lacked for the past couple of seasons, only for the new coach to turn around and just not use it, right? The point of bringing in a Malik Beasley, of bringing in a Tobias Harris and a Tim Hardaway Jr., are that these are guys who help not only space the floor, but they help take pressure off as scorers. They take pressure off as ball movers, as iron, not quite Ironmen, but guys that play high percentages of almost every single season they've been in the NBA. These are guys that are very well tooled to help your Cade Cunningham, Jaden Ivey, Ausar Thompson, Jalen Duren, Ron Holland find success, make it easier for them to do the things that they do really well. So to add those guys and then turn around and go, yeah, that's great, but I'm still going to start two non-shooters next to Cade, and they're just all going to figure it out together. That's not helping Cade. That's not helping Duren. That's not helping Ausar Thompson. 0 for 3. That would be such a shame. You can set up lineups right now that make life easy for Cade and Ivy at the same time, that make life easy for Ausar Thompson offensively, that make it easy for Jalen Duren, for Ron Holland. Like, you could do all of these things individually if you stagger your rotation in certain ways, and you make sure that pairings like Ausar and Duren aren't on the floor very often. I'm sure it'll happen a little, but not often enough where it's a hindrance to these guys. So I would just be I would be incredibly disappointed if all of this work was put in this offseason and it looks so good. It looks like they're finally going to be able to augment the young players on the roster to try and elevate them and maximize the parts of their game that they're already good at, let them develop through success, blah, blah, blah. and then they just don't, I would be significantly disappointed.
And who are the other two you put in the starting lineup outside of Cade, Asar, and Duren? Like presumably probably
Yeah.
Simone Fontecchio and Tobias Harris. And I mean they help with the concerns we have for playing that I'll just say duo of Asar and Duren together, but I don't think it's a complete solve. I'm not sure there's really any complete solve out there. So
Well,
I'm
it's not a
with
solve
you.
at all. It's not a solve at
Yeah.
all. Sorry to interrupt, but like Tobias Harris was league average for the past 2 seasons on good volume, so that's great. But he's not an elite shooter. He's not Malik Beasley shooting 42% from three on high volume. This is a good NBA shooter in Tobias Harris. Simone Fontecchio is an elite shooter. Cade Cunningham is league average or slightly below. Like, if you're going to play two complete non-shooters together, the only chance you have is to have three elite shooters next to him, right? And then maybe you're going to have a chance at a functioning offense if one of those non-shooters is also a very competent ball handler, so your effects on spacing are limited. But not only are Harris and Cade not elite shooters, but Cade Cunningham's the guy in this situation that is going to be dribbling the ball over 90% of the time when he's on the floor with this group, which means he can't space the floor.
Yeah.
He's the guy that everyone's sagging off onto. So you only have one elite shooter in Fontecchio and then a good shooter in Tobias Harris that teams can't really sag off of. Otherwise, it's still just pack the paint. Like, come on. It's not even close to a fix.
And you're paying Tobias Harris like $26 million a
Right.
year. So he's going to be starting. Like I was trying to think, what if you input Beasley in there and take out Fontecchio, but that doesn't solve it either. And then that your
No, and if you
defensive,
shifted Fontecchio up to the four, maybe that would help. But we've seen how he's kind of a liability against bigger body forwards in the past. Like, so now you're giving up more on the other end, which the point of Asar Thompson in the starting five would be to not give up as much on defense. It's not a great idea.
but what if it happens? Like what what do we? I mean, we can't do anything about it, but like
We'll
how
be disappointed. That's what we'll be. I will be. You do what you want, but I will be disappointed.
we don't want to see Asar and Duran on the floor at the same time, but like they're probably going to be at certain points if they're not starting it together. Like, do you think there's a world where we just don't see those two on the floor at the same time, like at all?
No, but you do it situationally. Like,
Yeah.
offense defense lineups, you could see that being a situation where you'd want Duren in there for his rebounding. You'd want to start Thompson in there for wing and perimeter defense more generally. For, like 2 to 3 minute short spurts, it could be fine. You might be able to like power through it, even though it's not ideal if that's just what the rotations are demanding on that specific night. Like, it's going to be flexible, it's going to happen. You just want to minimize it. And if it has to happen, then do it for a purpose. Have
Yeah.
something, one, offensively, have something in mind to attack the weakness of it, something to address the lack of spacing. So, like, you don't want Cade out there, probably is number one. You you'd lean into maybe a Star Thompson as a ball handler, which is and Jalen Duren as a passer, which is dicey. But maybe you do it that way. That's one potential solution that you could attempt. Or outside of that, like I said, the offense defense stuff. If you're going to have him in, just to get a rebound too, because Asar's a great rebounder. If you want to put him in at the two, so you could have a massive lineup just to box out on a free throw. Absolutely, that's a great idea. It's a great point to do it, right? But not just like, yeah, we're going to start every game with this, and we're just going to see how it goes.
Yeah. Especially if it doesn't go so well, you can't keep up out of the gate. So, I mean, maybe it'll be something that they try, but if it goes that way, you fall into a hole because of it. Hopefully, changes are made fairly quickly.
And the only thing that could really change this is if Asar Thompson and Amen Thompson switched like just totally switched bodies, and you had Asar Thompson with Amen's ability to handle the basketball and get to the rim and finish. Because if Asar Thompson's a guy that you can run, not run, but you could have him initiate action consistently and not have it go poorly after about 3 or 4 dribbles, then it really opens up. Because, like I said, you want the space for the ball handler. So if the ball handler is one of your non-shooters, it is very helpful. Right now, the problem is that Ausar Thompson's not the ball handler. Jalen Duren's not the ball handler. It's Cade, it's Ivy, and they have to then go through the muck.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. I'm with you there.
Let's stick with Duren though. This is from Derek Brown in the live audience. Says, are you guys concerned that the Pistons only have one guy over 6'9" on the roster? That one guy obviously being Jalen Duren.
Yes. In short,
I knew
yes.
your answer.
Yeah, like I wanted when you had Jalen Duren and Isaiah Stewart as your bigs, I wanted them to go out and get a third big who had some size that you could bring in, even if he was only there in case of injuries, emergencies, whatever it might be. I thought it would be a nice change up to throw into the lineup. It didn't work out that way. And I mean, Paul Reed is still a great player, even though he doesn't have the size that I think could help this team. I mean, we know a glaring weakness for this team last year was protecting the rim. I think Paul Reed can do that pretty well for his size, but I don't think he's an elite shot blocker by any means. So I'm hoping that there is some solution out there, some move that's made. I don't like if you move on from Stewart, do you go and get a big or something, or even wait until next season in free agency or the draft or whatever it might be? It's a different game. Obviously, you want your big to be able to step out and shoot the ball a little bit. Those guys don't come around often. But I think if the Pistons could just at least get one player with additional size, I think it would help cover up some of the rim protection needs. So I was a little surprised they didn't do that. But that said, I think Paul Reed was the best backup big on the market that they could have gotten. So I understand it. I guess I just think that there has to be a move either if it happens during the season or next off season to get some size on this team.
Yeah, and I think, for me, kind of the challenge is that, look, there wasn't anyone that they were bringing in unless they were going to draft Donovan Clingan in the lottery that would be playing instead of either Jalen Duren or Isaiah Stewart. I think there was an idea, and I kind of bought into it even early on in the offseason, that there was the potential to move on from one of those two guys before the season started. It's not looking like that. I think that would be a surprise at this point. So in hindsight, look, there was no 7-footer that they were going to sign or they were going to bring in outside of Donovan Clingan that was going to, displace one of these two bigs that are in the rotation as you're starting in backup five. So for me, what they're really giving up here, because they weren't going to fix the defense. The defense, if your rim protection improves, it's because Duren and Stu improve at that skill. Okay, that's not because of who they brought in as the third center. So by not having a 7-foot, big-bodied third center that can, come in a pinch, I think the biggest thing that you're giving up is just that you don't have 6 impactful fouls to throw at Joel Embiid. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like some of Giannis is kind of the same way. Like guys that are so big, you just kind of want to bang them a lot, see if you could get them out of their
Pause.
rhythm. Pause. What do you mean?
Nothing.
Oh
Keep
no.
going.
Oh, my bad. My bad. Yeah, you want. Gosh darn it, Blake. I didn't even
Sorry.
hear it. No, man. All right. Everyone forget the
No,
last
keep it
2
moving.
seconds there.
My bad.
Anyway. Um, you just don't have the big body to throw against the guy like that to get them out of their rhythm, to just be physical with them, to try and impact them in that way. Famously, I think it might have been like Eldon Campbell or something had played that role against Shaquille O'Neal multiple times for the Pistons. in the past. Like Josh Harrelson's done it. Like it's just a big body that
Josh
you
Harrelson.
you throw them out there, you tell them to go get 6 fouls, and as long as they play, like those are plus minutes, and you're happy with it. It's a very niche role. I think Paul Reed is going to be more impactful as a third big than that type of guy would have been, because A, he's just a better, more talented player, and then B, with the injury history you've got on Duren and on Stewart, I think he is going to play a role, right? But the one thing that they're really losing is just the ability to throw someone massive at Joel Embiid and give him 6 quick fouls just to see if it impacts him. Like it's not a huge deal, I don't think, for a team that's already going to be bad defensively. I should say that too.
Yeah.
Like if Duren was a much better defender, I do not think we're having this conversation right now.
Yep, for sure. And that's why I bought into a little bit like you brought up Donovan Clingan. I said what on draft night he would have been my pick. I think everyone was a bit surprised with Ron Holland, but I understood not investing in a 7 foot plus guy who's had injury issues. I mean, a lot of guys at that size run into that kind of thing, and that's why teams are reluctant to invest those high stakes draft picks in them. But that's why I kind of got behind the Modest Buzelis to Detroit train. He was the guy that was mocked to Detroit. It felt like in every mock draft leading up to it. And hey, if the Pistons drafted him, he would be the tallest guy on the team right now. He doesn't address your rim protection needs in full by any means. He needs to add some size. He'll definitely get pushed around by a ton of bigs in that league, but I at least liked him as a secondary like help rim protector and everything like that. So, I mean, I think Ron has more upside, so I'm not uh, questioning the pick or anything like that. Hopefully it works out. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I think there needs to be some long term solution about uh, adding some size to this team, whether it's off the bench or as a third big, whatever it is. If Jalen Duren is the guy that you're building around from the 5 spot and he improves defensively, like you mentioned.
Yeah, the defense is going to be a big question, like you said right at the beginning of the episode. Let's do this last voicemail here, and then we'll get out on our way. We'll save a couple of these questions. We think, yeah, we got 3 left, so we'll kick some of those to next week. Apologies to Rames, Peter Verb, and Augie 28 that we didn't get to it this week. We will. We'll touch on them all next week. But this is Evan from Ontario talking about, I believe, Cade Cunningham.
Blake, Wes, Blake. Good to chat with you guys. This is Evan from London, Ontario, Canada. Feels like consensus on Cade right now is that he is a one, like he's your number one guy. And like most people came away from last season, maybe not everyone, but most fans came away from last season saying, hey, I'm comfortable with Cade being the guy, the number one dude, right? I'm curious, this upcoming season, what would it take for you guys or maybe fans more broadly to start looking sideways at Cade as a number one option? Like, what season outcome, assuming decent injury luck, or maybe average injury luck, would make you look twice? Like, is it a win threshold? Like, what result would make you think, hey, maybe this guy isn't the guy? I'm just curious. Like, what would it take to shake your faith in Cade as our number one? Go Pistons. Take care, guys.
Thanks,
All
Evan,
right,
for
Blake. I was
Yeah.
just gonna say, I think this is our first international caller, and I'm
Oh,
pretty pumped. That's pretty cool. So I think Evan from London, Ontario, Canada is going down in the history books here as the first international call-in question to the Pindown.
there we go. Shout out to you, Evan. Great question. It's really one that makes you think because I mean the roster, although it's improved, it's not like a NBA roster that you look at and you say, okay, like this team could make some things happen. I think so. I think the best case scenario is this current iteration of the Pistons shows that they can be a little bit cohesive. The guys on the roster right now might not be all here in future years, but your main pieces like your Cade, your Ausar, your Ron Holland, whatever you're doing with Ivy and Duren shows a little bit of something that can just make things happen and be at least you're taking 2, 3 of those guys with you moving forward. That said, I think like I'm questioning if our expectations for the team this season are even a bit too low just because they only won 14 games last season. Like if they win 25 games, do you think it's a success? Like that's still not a good team. I think that if you can stretch that out, get close to 30, the low 30s, and be in a little bit of the play-in conversation, that is ideal. If this team comes out and puts out 20 wins, like what would need to happen for that to come to fruition? I think Cade would need to take a step back, and some of the players that were brought in this offseason, maybe there are some injuries thrown in there, maybe they're just not everything. They take regressions themselves. I don't think like I'm not expecting Cade to go out there and take a step back or anything like that. I think we haven't in his career so far seen him put in the best scenario to succeed. I think he finally has pieces of that to be able to maybe not like fully succeed, but at least take a step. I think if you don't take somewhat of a step, like that's when you have to start questioning it. But then the question comes to me like how big of a step is needed for you not to question that? I mean, I think if this team comes out and wins anywhere in the teens of games again, like you have to really question what's going on. But even if that's the case, like is it not Cade? Were there other injuries that played into a part of it? But even if you were to question him because of the win total, I think you would have to look at his individual performance as well, and he would have had to take a considerable step back. But then there's like a ton of context you have to take into account, and no matter what happens, I don't think the team would be ready or even think about moving on from Cade for at least a few more years, and things would really have to go bad for that to happen because then you're just back to square one. So it's a tough one, but man, it's crazy because the 25 wins seems so low, but I think even if that was the case, you'd be like, all right, they won 11 more games than last year. So you at least saw everyone take a step. You saw a roster that could potentially make sense. So what do you do? This is a really tough one. I'm interested to see what you have to say, Wes.
Yeah, well, first, 25 games, improving by 11 games on a season is incredibly hard to do, especially
It's
for
an
the worst
outlier.
team. Yeah, it is a legitimate outlier in the draft lottery era for the worst team in the league to improve double-digit games over one offseason. So if they can pull that off, which I mean, their roster looks a lot better than last year, so there's nothing saying they can't. It is a outlier. It is a historical footnote, which a good one, not a bad one, like their 28 game losing streak. But it's still, it's very difficult to do. So I would count that as a win, even though it's incredibly underwhelming. As for the question, look, I think there are levels to being the number one guy. I think, we've mentioned this. I believe we've talked about this a little bit before on the show, but we've now seen through 2 seasons and 12 games who Cade Cunningham is. I think every single one of us as fans, we have an idea of Cade Cunningham right now, what he is. Even if this is the iteration that we see through the next 5 years of his contract extension, right? Even if he doesn't improve and he just plateaus, that is still a guy that is good enough to get you to the playoffs if you build something competent around that guy. That's not a guy that's gonna, make you a top 4 seed. That's not a guy who's gonna, take you to the conference finals, eventually win you a championship. But those are all steps up that number 1 guy ladder, right? So, in my opinion, there's nothing that could happen this year outside of another season-ending injury that would make me think Cade Cunningham isn't a guy in the short term you build around to improve this roster. What is up for grabs and what will continue to be up for debate is, how high does that go? Is he a guy that can win you a championship? Is he a guy that can get you consistently to the conference finals? Is he just a guy that's going to get you a mid seed in the playoffs every year? Like, how good does he get? How good can a team built around him and his skill set become with him as the de facto best player, even if that's not the best score, the highest score on the team? So, like, that's my answer. Like, number 1 guy to get you into the playoffs and make the play-in game and whatnot. We've answered that. We know that he's good enough for that. There's nothing outside of another season-ending injury that can make you question that. And if he does get another season-ending injury, you're not questioning the talent, right? You're questioning if he can stay healthy enough, kind of like the situation LaMelo Ball's in right now. He's had such nasty, lingering injuries for the past 2 seasons, and now you kind of question if he's really that kind of guy that they can rely on. That's not because of talent, it's just because of durability. How much higher he can go, I think we're going to find out, right? Does he plateau this season, him being Cade? Does he plateau? Does he improve? Does his efficiency get better? Do his turnovers continue to go down? All of these, can he get over 25 points a night? All those things kind of are going to help inform the level of number 1 he's going to become. But there's nothing that should make you question whether you can build a team around that guy and win games. We already know that.
Yeah, I think the biggest question for me is like, and Evan's question was about Cade, but it's like who is going to be number 2? Like, do you see enough flashes from Ron Holland this year to make you think he can be Cade's running mate in the future? I think that helps answer a lot of your questions, but I don't know. It just everything we've seen from Cade so far makes me think like a guy at his size who has his change of pace, his type of game, everything he has in his repertoire, and just the kind of player he is. Like, those guys don't come around a lot, and a lot of teams are still looking for them. But luckily, I think the Pistons have it. It's just like, what else needs to happen around that? I think, again, the biggest thing for me is who's going to be number 2. Like, if I had to take a bet on someone, and it's the most unproven one, but I would think Ron Holland, and I think all he has to do in his rookie season is show some flashes that he can be that eventually. And if he does, that gives you a few more years of leeway to say, like, okay, we're going to let this like Cade and Ron Holland pairing develop and develop and develop and see what they turn into. But yeah, if you look sideways at Cade and think about like potentially moving on from him, like, I think things have to go incredibly wrong for that to happen. And I mean, hopefully last year was as low as things could go. I mean, things kept getting worse and worse. So maybe it could still happen, but with the roster moves, the restructuring, new coach, everything like that, you have to believe it's not the case, and you can just at least see some semblance of upward trajectory.
Right. And I mean, look, the stat line that he put up last season is already worth the extension that they signed him to. If that,
Yep.
I know none of us want this, and I don't think this is going to happen, but if that is truly the extent of Cade Cunningham, that is as good as he's going to get, it is already worth the amount of money that they've agreed to pay him in the future, because that rookie extension is not a ton of money. Like, it's really not a bad deal. It's kind of a bargain bin for a guy that's borderline all-star if the team was more talented. And won some more games like he would have been last season. So you'd need the injury situation to get so bad that teams around the league aren't willing to pay him what the Pistons are about to pay him. That's what would have to happen. Which is,
and
I mean, hopefully not, but that's what it would be.
Yeah, Koo from Locked On Pistons has talked about this a lot, but Cade's numbers are eerily similar to Paolo Banchero's in Orlando, and Paolo was named an All-Star last year. He is definitely in a much better team context, has a ton of solid players around him that Cade hasn't had thus far. So you have to think if the roster is a bit more complementary as opposed to what it has been, hopefully it lets Cade shine a little bit more. And he's already, like what we saw last season, he shined a ton. It's just like, what's the level that Cade can get to, like you said, Wes.
All right, I think we close it out there, Blake. We've this is the longest we've gone in a couple weeks, so guys,
a lot of
we
questions.
Really appreciate
shout out to everyone.
Big time shout out. We really appreciate all these questions. I mean, we just love talking Pistons basketball. So when we get this many questions for an early September recording of the Pindown, like it just makes me giddy. So this was great. I appreciate we both appreciate everyone sending in the voicemails, the written questions, the live questions. A lot of fun. Wasn't expecting it this week, so I'm jazzed.
100%. And yeah, I mean, we got through August. I mean, training camp is going to start like at the end of this month, and then a few weeks later, the regular season kicks off. So we're almost there. Shout out to everyone for all the questions, and shout out to Evan for taking advantage of the phone line. Now we know it works across the border, so everyone can dial in. The number to call for that, if you want to hear your voice on the show and ask your question, is 313-355-2717. And special thanks to Sean Court, the managing editor of Detroit Bad Boys, for supporting the show. And shout out to you guys again for all the great questions and talking points tonight. We really appreciate it. We'll catch you next week, whether on your commute or live with us on YouTube. We can't wait to talk more Detroit basketball with you all.